All right, now let's talk about the end of the world. This is, I did the first part last week. You might remember the first 13 verses of Mark, chapter 13. This week we're taking a larger chunk. Okay, this is verses 14 through 37. A lot of apocalyptic language that Jesus is using. We're going to see what it means and how we can apply it to our lives today, even though he said this 2,000 years ago. So follow along as I read out loud. Here's what Mark has to say from Jesus' words in Mark chapter 13. The day is coming when you will see the sacrilegious object that causes desecration standing where he should not be. Reader, pay attention. Then those in Judea must flee to the hills. A person out on the deck of a roof must not go down into the house to pack. A person out in the field must not return even to get a coat. How terrible it will be for pregnant women and for nursing mothers in those days. And pray that your flight will not be in winter, for there will be greater anguish in those days than at any time since God created the world. And it will never be so great again. In fact, unless the Lord shortens that time of calamity, not a single person will survive. But for the sake of his chosen ones, he has shortened those days. Then if anyone tells you, look, here's the Messiah, or there he is, don't believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will rise up and perform signs and wonders so as to deceive, if possible, even God's chosen ones. Watch out. I have warned you about this ahead of time. At that time, after the anguish of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will give no light, the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. Then everyone will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds with great power and glory. And he will send out his angels to gather his chosen ones from all over the world, from the farthest ends of the earth and heaven. Now learn a lesson from the fig tree. When its branches bud and its leaves begin to sprout, you know that summer is near. In the same way, when you see all these things taking place, you can know that his return is very near, right at the door. I tell you the truth. This generation will not pass from the scene before all these things take place. Heaven and earth will disappear, but my words will never disappear. However, no one knows the day or hour when these things will happen, not even the angels in heaven or the Son himself. Only the Father knows. And since you don't know when that time will come, be on guard, stay alert. The coming of the Son of Man can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. When he left home, he gave each of his slaves instructions about the work they were to do. And he told the gatekeeper to watch for his return. You too must keep watch, for you don't know when the master of the household will return, in the evening, at midnight, before dawn, or at daybreak. Don't let him find you sleeping when he arrives without warning. I say to you what I say to everyone, watch for him. Whew, that's a lot, but it's good. This may be the most difficult sermon I've ever preached. Most difficult yet, because I have to squeeze all of this into today. And it's a lot. The reason why it's so difficult is there are layers upon layers. There are layers giving birth to layers. We have grandbaby layers, right? In fact, there are layers upon layers, and so we need context. We need to understand what's going on behind all of this. It's really tough to jump into a scripture like this, cold the way we are. So what is Jesus talking about? Is Jesus talking about the end of the age? Maybe more importantly, why is Jesus telling this to his disciples? And why did Mark write all of this down for the new believers and those who were coming to Christ? How are we supposed to read this? How were millions of people over the centuries supposed to read this and apply it to their lives? It's very difficult. So, Should we be worried that the sun and moon are going to go dark? Should we be worried that the stars are going to fall from the sky? Do stars fall from the sky? Are they going to fall? Do they work that way? And what about the powers in heaven? What are these powers in the heavens? Are they spiritual or are they aliens that Congress has been talking about this week in Washington, D.C.? Have you heard about that? They're having congressional hearings on aliens and UFOs and UAPs and all of that. How many people haven't heard that? Like this week? Yeah, in Congress, they're being interviewed. It's happening. So is this what Jesus is talking about? Some people think, man, maybe it could be. How are we supposed to take all of this, and what difference does it make in our lives? Let me give us the short answer, and I'm going to jump to the end just for a moment. It's found in verse 37. This is what Jesus says. I say to you what I say to everyone. Watch for him. He's saying, watch for Jesus. This is the message. Ultimately, if you had to sum this whole thing up, the message is this. Watch for Jesus. Don't watch for aliens. Watch for Jesus. So we're headed here right toward Christmas. I used to like to zoom past Thanksgiving for obvious reasons when I was a kid. Let's get to Christmas as soon as possible. But now I like to take things slower because I really like pie. More than ever, I like pie. I like all kinds of pie. Pecan pie. Eunice promised that she's going to bring me some flan. And so, just kidding, putting pressure on you. Nevertheless, Jesus' coming to earth changed everything. What we should get, especially right now, is how incredible and monumental Jesus' incarnation was for humans. This is talked about all the way back in Genesis chapter 3. There is a prophecy at the very beginning that someone is going to come to rescue humanity. It's constantly spoken about in the Old Testament scriptures. The whole system of sacrifice, animal sacrifice, substitution, redemption, it's constantly on display. God is a warrior, he's a rescuer, he's a redeemer, he's a father, he's even a mother, he's a husband, he's a son, he's a king, he's even a sacrifice, he's a lamb. God is even a human. God is a man in the Bible. What do you think it means that God became a man? All of the incredible stories we read about, especially in the Old Testament, the great flood, right? The parting of the Red Sea, Jonah and the great fish, God stopping the sun from setting, David and Goliath, Elijah and the prophets of Baal. What do you think would be the most significant story in the Bible above everything else? I think it would be God walking among humans as a human. The incarnation. In the history of the universe, I think that's the most significant thing that could ever happen. And something big happened. Something so big that 2,000 years later, we're still talking about it. That's what Jesus is talking about. That's what I believe Mark wants everyone to know in what we just read. Now, we need to be careful here. Be careful not to use the Bible like a horoscope. Right? Careful not to use the Bible like a decoder ring. You know, we're not called to be Indiana Jones trying to figure out where the Ark of the Covenant is or the Holy Grail or figure out when the third temple is going to be built. We can see here very clearly what Jesus wants us to be focused on. And if you listen to Jesus' stories along the way, you see a very clear picture come into view. God's goal is not to help us escape the world. It's for us to help him rescue the world. That's his goal for us. That changes the way we view our lives. Some people might be trying to avoid all the bad stuff in life. If I could just make it to the end without anything really bad happening to me, that would be great. Some people are just trying to live as good a life as possible. But those who can see what Jesus is really saying view their life with a different kind of meaning and purpose. As believers in Jesus, as followers of Jesus, we have a different meaning, a different purpose in our lives. We're not here to avoid. We're not here to get by. We're here on purpose, for a purpose. Now, I'm not inviting bad things into my life. I don't want bad things to happen in my life, but that's not my focus. My focus is, what is my purpose? What does God have for us to do? So to help us unravel all of this, I think we should take this section by section. Let's start with verses 14 through 23. I'm going to read them again because they easily leave our minds. So let's do verses 14 through 23 and break it down just a little bit. The day is coming when you will see a sacrilegious object that causes desecration standing where he should not be. Reader, pay attention. Then those in Judea must flee to the hills. A person out on the deck of a roof must not go down into the house to pack. A person out in the field must not return even to get a coat. How terrible it will be for pregnant women and for nursing mothers in those days. And pray that your flight will not be in winter, for there will be greater anguish in those days than any time since God created the world, and it will never be so great again. In fact, unless the Lord shortens that time of calamity, not a single person will survive. But for the sake of his chosen ones, he has shortened those days. Then if anyone tells you, look, here's the Messiah, there he is, don't believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will rise up, perform signs and wonders so as to deceive, if possible, even God's chosen ones. Watch out. I've warned you about this ahead of time. Let's start at the beginning. What is this sacrilegious object that causes desecration? I like the way the other translations typically call it. It's called the abomination of desolation. That just sounds more ominous. The abomination of desolation. Watch out for the abomination of desolation. Well, here's two things we need to know. First, God is going to allow his sacred space on earth to be desecrated. That is ominous. That's scary. His sacred space on earth, he's going to allow it to be desecrated. That was the temple. The temple was a symbol on earth of God's holiness, of his moral purity. If the temple is desecrated, there's no way for humans to connect to God. That's Jewish belief. That's Judaism. That's the way the system was set up. This place, the temple, was the place where God met with humans. And most people don't take God's holiness that seriously because, unfortunately, we as the human race tend to have a problem with pride. Think of it this way. Imagine God lives in a house with white carpet. It's not smart, but he lives in a house with white carpet, pure white carpet, unblemished, okay? Now, outside, it's been raining, and we've been tracking through the mud. God looks at us and says, you can't come inside here. No way. And we say, what's the problem? It's not that bad. And we try to wipe off some of the mud, right? Now imagine that at that house you have a mud room where you can hose off the shoes. You can clean them up, right? The temple is God's house, and there's a place and a way to get cleaned up. Jesus says, when you see muddy shoes on the carpet, you know something has gone terribly wrong. That's what he's talking about when he says the abomination of desolation. Something is on the white carpet that is very muddy and very wrong. It should not be there. That's the first thing. The second thing is what Jesus is saying. Mark writes, and Jesus says, reader, pay attention. Why does Mark put that in there? Reader, pay attention. That means that when Jesus says the abomination of desolation, well, there's something more to that. There's something extra that we're supposed to know. Most of the Jews would know that. Mark's audience is not primarily Jewish. So they're like, what are you talking about? Oh, we need to dig deeper. The sacrilegious object, okay, was written about by Daniel hundreds of years before Jesus. This is a prophecy. Daniel's book is mostly about the coming Messiah. And this is also why there's all of this interest in the first century about the coming Messiah. You remember the Magi, it's Christmas time. The Magi are coming from the east. Why do they know that something special is supposed to be happening here? This is the prophecies. Why does Herod say to his priests, what's going on? Why are they here? Well, the prophets then understood. They could do the math. They could read the book of Daniel and say something special is supposed to be happening. Someone is coming. He's supposed to be born in Bethlehem. Bottom line, Jesus is saying, now is the time when everything changes. So how did it change for us? How did it change for us? I'll tell you that in a few minutes, okay? But first, let's look at the next section. It'll give us some more clues. Verses 24 through 27. It says this, at that time, after the anguish of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will give no light, the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. Then everyone will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds with great power and glory. And he will send out his angels to gather his chosen ones from all over the world, from the farthest ends of the earth and heaven. Once again, Jesus is connecting himself to the ancient prophecies. Prophecies in Isaiah. That's where he's quoting when he says the sun will be darkened and the moon will give no light and everything's going to be shaken, the powers of the heavens. He's quoting from Isaiah. Now, doesn't it sound like it's the end? But the question is, what is it the end of? Is it the end of the cosmos? No, it's not. It's the end of the age. Now you say, well, what age? What age is it the end of? Ancient Israel, remember this, ancient Israel had one main purpose. It was to show the world that God exists and Yahweh is the one true, eternally existent creator God of the universe. That was the purpose of Israel. Question for us today is, what is our purpose? It's to know this God. It's to enjoy a relationship with him. It's to love him. It's to show him to the rest of the world. So what is all of this apocalyptic language pointing us toward? It's the end of the temple. It's the end of the sacrifices. Is that me, Ron? Making noise? Oh, there it is. Sorry. Let me fix that. Better. What's all of this pointing toward? The end of the temple, the end of sacrifices, no Holy of Holies anymore, no place where God comes to meet with humans, no place where God cleanses the nation of Israel from their sin. Remember, God is allowing his holy place on earth to be desecrated. It's the end of it. It's the completion and fulfillment of the law. It's the end of the old covenant. It's the end of that time period of the law. It's a fulfillment of it, and that's why it sounds so horrifying. That's why it sounds like it's the end, because it's going to go out with a bang. 40 years later, that's exactly what happens. Now, who should we blame for such a messed up world? Many people blame God. They say, well, everything's a mess. It's God's fault. Now, they don't actually mean God. What they mean is, if Christianity was true, a good God wouldn't have let things get this way. But let's make it personal. Who's responsible for the way our lives are today? Who's responsible for our personal life? Or maybe you say it like this: how much am I responsible for the way my life is? How much have I contributed to it? Do you know why you exist? Do you know what you're supposed to do with your life? Do you know why you're alive at this time and in this place? How can anyone say that it's someone else's fault? It's God's fault for the way my life is if I don't know who I am and what I'm supposed to do. I won't know if I'm headed his way or if I'm just doing whatever I feel like. See, in a world that popped up randomly, you're not here for any reason at all. In that kind of world, you can't even trust your own thoughts because they're just products of chance, a mindless universe. But in a world that's being guided, and here's the point, in a world that's being guided through history, where the events of history are moving towards something, well, that means every piece has a part to play, even seemingly small pieces. One of the reasons why I can trust the Bible, one of the reasons I can trust the God of the Bible is because I see a world that's moving towards something. So that means that my life is part of God's plan. What a lot of people don't realize is that God wants you to know what your part in this plan is. He wants you to be fulfilled. That doesn't mean knowing everything, doesn't mean even knowing the future, but I should know why I exist. I should know why I'm here and what I'm supposed to do. And so that leads us to this last part. And this is in verses 28 through 37. It says this: now learn a lesson from the fig tree. When its branches bud and its leaves begin to sprout, you know that summer is near. In the same way, when you see all these things taking place, you can know that his return is very near, right at the door. I tell you the truth, this generation will not pass from the scene before all these things take place. Heaven and earth will disappear, but my words will never disappear. However, no one knows the day or hour when these things will happen, not even the angels in heaven or the Son himself. Only the Father knows. And since you don't know when that time will come, be on guard, stay alert. The coming of the Son of Man can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. When he left home, he gave each of his slaves instructions about the work they were to do, and he told the gatekeeper to watch for his return. You too must keep watch, for you don't know when the master of the household will return, in the evening, at midnight, before dawn, or at daybreak. Don't let him find you sleeping when he arrives without warning. I say to you what I say to everyone: watch for him. Jesus says, no one knows exactly when all of this is going to happen. He says, not even me. You say, well, there's something that Jesus didn't know? That's incredible. Well, it's not hard to figure out why this is a secret. God doesn't want to be used any more than we like to be used. If you knew how and when you were going to die, what do you think you would do right up to that point? I know what I would do. So it's a secret. God is love, and how we relate to God is by love. There is no love in a relationship where all we're trying to get out of it is some kind of favor from the other person. Love is always based on who the person is. And that's why the final message here is from Jesus. Watch for him. Watch for Jesus. In other words, be ready. Don't waste your life. Don't sit around just wasting away thinking that it's all pointless, that nothing matters, and that the world told you this is how you're supposed to be happy. Don't waste your life. Don't spend all your time worrying about what others are doing. Don't live in your past hurts. Don't be bitter and fold back into your own shell. Don't let resentment take root in your heart and grow into animosity. Why? Why should we live differently? Because everything is moving forward with an ultimate purpose and plan. You're part of that plan. It's not random. It's not even circular. It's moving toward perfection. It's moving toward love, toward life. And we're supposed to be a part of it. We are part of God's future plan. And it's not just something that happens in the future that we just sit around and wait for. It's something that includes our lives right now. So what should we be doing? Watch for his return, whether it's evening, night, before dawn, or daybreak. What does he mean? What he's saying is always be ready. Any time of day. Don't drift off into what the world is trying to seduce you and lure you into and say, this is how you have fulfillment in life. And these are the things that are going to distract you. No. Watch for him. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Stay focused. In other words, live like you believe that God has a plan for your life. It's moving towards something. It's his plan, and your part is important and significant. Now, humanity had a problem. Just like many people have problems in their lives and they don't understand what it means. Here's the problem. It's Ponce de Leon. Remember that? The fountain of youth. We all want to live forever. Our legends point toward our deepest desires. C.S. Lewis said that they're pointing us toward a greater reality. Humanity was separated from its source of eternal life. We lost the fountain of youth, you might say. The temple was the place on earth where people would connect to that source of life. Most of what we've been reading over the past couple weeks has been about that temple being replaced by a new temple. Jesus told us what that new temple is. That temple is Jesus. That's what makes Christianity different than everything else, than every other religion, every other faith, is that through Jesus, we connect to God. That's what he was saying. I am replacing the place where people connect with God. You connect to God through me. You're made clean. The mud is washed away. You come into God's presence through me. I'm the new temple. Jesus said he's going to send out his angels to gather his chosen ones from all over the world, from the farthest ends of the earth and heaven, he said. This gathering has been happening for 2,000 years. One day, it'll all be complete. If you have put your trust in Jesus, you're part of that gathering. And we're supposed to be watching and working and ready for him, not wasting away in our lives in just random nothingness, not chasing the world and its empty promises. Why? Because we're made for a purpose. Do you know who you are? Do you know what you're supposed to be doing? Maybe that's something that here in a few moments you'd like to write down. It's a good question. Who am I? Who am I, God? What am I supposed to be doing with my life? God wants to show you. Will you say, okay, Jesus, you've got all of me. Reveal it to me. Show me what you want to do with my life. Show me who I am. Enough chasing my own dreams. Now I'll go after you with everything I've got. What is it that God has for you to do specifically? And it doesn't matter what stage of life you're in. It doesn't matter where you are, what economic status or demographic you're in. God has something for you specifically. Do you know your next steps? From here today, after this reading, can you say, this is what I'm supposed to do next? Do you know what to do with the things that God has given to you? Is it random? Did he just give you the life you have out of just throwing everything out there and see where it all lands? Or did he put you in this place in life with what you have and the blessings and gifts and even the responsibilities for a specific purpose? Do we have a responsibility for our lives and what we have ownership over? Are your struggles and pains just random? Think about it that way. Are your struggles and pain just random, chance? This just happened to me for no reason at all. Or are they there to move you forward? Are the challenges you're having in life that frustrate you so much, are they just random chance? Maybe you've seen your struggles in that way. Something that I need to just get through, something I need to get past and put behind me. But maybe God sees them as the way forward. Maybe God sees the struggle and pain, the kind of pain, that cataclysmic pain that was coming on Israel, that was going to be horrifying and terrible. Guess what? It had a purpose. It had a grand purpose, the greatest purpose that we could ever know. It changed everything. It's what opened up eternity for us. But that means that even the pain, even the hurt and the struggles, God can use, God will use for a purpose in your life. So a great question to ask God: what am I supposed to do? What do I do next? How do I get through this struggle? How do you want me to respond to this in my life? Will you help me through? Rather than saying, God, just take it away. I just want you to take it away. What we should ask is, God, why is this here? Why is this in my life? What do you want me to become because of this in my life? Is there something you're supposed to be doing inside of me that helps me through it? I can't seem to shake this struggle that I have. What are you trying to tell me? That's a great question.